welcome to the Make and Market webinar brought to you by Axon Garside, a growth agency and HubSpot Diamond partner. I'm your host, Lawrence Chapman. I'm the content lead here at Axon Garside. Exhibitions and trade shows have long been a go-to source for manufacturing companies hoping to generate leads, network, and close new sales. But with the average cost of trade show space falling in the range of £300 to £500 per square metre, how can manufacturers get the most out of their experience and maximise the return on investment? So unfortunately, our managing director, Ian Guyver, can't be here for the discussion, but I'm thrilled to be joined by my Axon Garside colleagues, Jack Williams, our commercial director, and Rob White, marketing manager, who'll be sharing their insights on how you can get the most out of your exhibition strategy. So thanks so much for joining me, everyone.
No problem. Nice to be here. It's nice to be on this side of it for once.
I have to apologise in advance that you're stuck with just me answering a lot of these questions instead of Ian as well. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but we'll see.
Oh no, I'm sure it'll be. I'm sure it's a positive, Jack. Don't put yourself down too much, mate. But we'll start with you, Jack. So first of all, why do manufacturers continue to attend in-person exhibitions in what is now an increasingly virtual world?
I think there's a few things. The first one being, it's what businesses in the sector have always done. They're comfortable in spending money on events and stands and speaking slots and, environments where they can physically, in some instances, showcase their products, because the manufacturing industrial sector as a whole are very much focused on kind of the actual bricks and mortar, the actual product being in front of them. They're very visual. They want to see it. They want to touch it and all that sort of stuff as well. So I think events are a great way to do that. Another thing, I guess, is that there are a lot of organizations out there, including us actually, which I'll go on to talk about in a second, that have had great success from events as well. They've gone, they've had, lots of conversations with people when they're there, and maybe just one of those conversations, in 1 year turned into a really considerable piece of business for them. And there's this kind of FOMO effect, this fear of missing out, that if they don't go to these shows and these events, that maybe they won't be able to have those golden conversations with those people that then turn into really affluent business relationships. So there's that. And, we've been on the receiving end of that. We exhibited at the B2B Marketing and Sales Innovation Expo down in London at the Excel for probably 4 years in a row. And the first year we picked up quite a few pieces of business from it. So we thought, well, definitely we're going to go back. The second year we picked up, I think, a piece of business. And in the subsequent 2 years, and this could have just been a sign of the times, because it was kind of in a, sort of immediately after COVID, where the environment was maybe not as energetic as it had previously been, and not as many people going down there, obviously being used to remote work and doing everything online. But we didn't get anything. But then the fourth year we went back again, because we thought, well, actually in the first and second year we got something. We'll go back in the fourth year. We'll get something this time, and we didn't get anything again. So I think there's this whole fear of missing out that people go through as well. And there's this drive, I guess, from the top in a lot of these organizations as well, where managing directors, CEOs, etc., even CMOs in organizations, they're used to and they're accustomed to go into events and that kind of thing. So there's a few things there, I guess. I think one of the really, really interesting things about it, though, is that as marketers, a lot of the time we kind of fail to remember the core principle of marketing. The fact that really, really good marketing is about having the right message at the right time in the right place, utilizing the right channel for it, and using that as a means to kind of get under the skin of the objectives, pains, challenges, and requirements of our target audience through really concise and great messaging. And regardless of what channel you use versus an event versus doing digital, we're a digital agency, so it probably feels weird why we're talking about events, but the core principle of marketing is the same in both instances. It's just the channel and the format of it which has changed. People, whether they're going to an event or whether they're being driven to a website or to social media or to their online network, they're all doing that with a level of intent. They're looking, they're seeking for answers to maybe pains and challenges. They're looking to educate themselves. They're looking to try and grow their network and so on. It's just a different medium of which we're doing that, I guess. And I think sometimes we lose sight of that in thinking about how do we actually approach these events. I think that's a really interesting point, and I think we'll probably talk more about that in a minute.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's undoubted benefits that can be brought to the fore, Jack, when we're talking about events such as this. But what are some of the common challenges faced by manufacturers that may prevent them from getting the most from these events?
There's a number of things, really. Sorry, I think my sound might have been going a bit dodgy there for some reason. Apologies. Yeah, the number of things. I think planning is the biggest thing. There's obviously planning for an event in the sense of, making sure you've got the right messaging, you've got the stand, you've got your stand builders ready and waiting to go, and all those kinds of things. But there is this whole preparation around driving people there in the first instance and thinking through how are we actually going to get people that we want to sell and market to at these events, and what channels can we utilize to do that. I think a lot of organizations kind of miss a trick there, and I'll talk about some specifics on that in a second. Another one is when they're actually at the event. So how do we actually, once we've had conversations with people, make sure that we've got really good notes, we've got a mechanism for actually capturing leads and those conversations and so on. So when we get back to the office, we know how we need to approach them, follow up with them, nurture to them, sell to them, and those kinds of things. And then the third thing, which is directly related to that, how do we actually think about our post-event strategy? And that's almost the critical piece, right? There are people out there and organizations. I remember, this is just before I joined Axon Garside, and I've been here for 8 years now. But Ian, who isn't here, I'm sure he would have told you all about this, is if he was here, used to run events for really large industrial organizations. One of which that I always remember is, he talks about, is a company called Young Heinrich, big manufacturer of lift trucks and forklifts and reach trucks and these kinds of things. And he always tells me about the amount of money they spent on these events. In some instances, hundreds of thousands of pounds with these multi-level sort of stands with I think one of them actually had people delivering burgers to people on the stand on roller skates. He often reminds me of, which is quite funny. You probably wouldn't see that sort of thing these days. But people are spending so much money, but don't pay real attention to the follow-up and how they're going to make best use of that investment. When we went to an event and we did it on a pretty small scale, we spoke to probably 60, 70 odd people over the course of a day. And 60 or 70 people probably doesn't feel like a lot, but when you take that back to the office, remembering every detail of the conversation you had with them, what they were interested with when they came to the stand, whether they were ready to be sold to or were just having an initial conversation, all of that has a level of impact, I guess, on how you actually follow up with them. So yeah, I think those are kind of the three. Planning in advance and understanding your market, how you're going to drive engagement and get people to actually come and see you at the event, how then you're actually going to capture that information, those conversations you have, and then how you're going to use that data and intelligence to market to them, sell to them, and manage that follow-up process moving through, I guess.
Yeah, sure. And you kind of touched on it a little bit there, Jack, with the post-event strategy. But if we just kind of rewind a little bit to pre-event, so I guess I know it's a massive cliche, but a large part of the success that can be attributed to events such as these boils down to what's like the cliche of fail to prepare and prepare to fail. So what does an effective pre-event strategy look like?
I'm going to start answering that question by asking a question back to you and the audience. Have you ever seen on LinkedIn a business put a post up with a generic sort of Shutterstock image or some promotional imagery that the events company has sent to you or put on their website saying, we're going to be attending the NEC on the 1st of March. Come and steers on stand 247829. That's as far as it goes for a lot of companies. Which there's merit in doing that. It's an easy and convenient way to kind of get that message out there that you're attending those events. But is it effective? Probably not for the most part. Another strategy that people use is email, obviously. Okay, let's get our database. Databases for and CRMs in a lot of cases for industrial businesses are probably not in the most healthy of states, if I'm trying to be PC about it. We all have our own data issues, but sending an email out to thousands of people, regardless of maybe where they're based, what location they're in, what they're interested in, whether they're a customer or not, because that obviously changes the terms of engagement as well. is also a surefire way to probably lose out on a lot of potential engagement and so on. So I think, to come back to actually answering the question, good pre-event planning and promotion, I think, is first of all underpinned entirely around understanding where your prospects are in both their thinking in terms of how they're going through that buyer's journey, or maybe not even within a buyer's journey at all at the moment, and what is it that's going to actually break the status quo for them and make them believe that coming to that event as a whole, because they're probably not going to come to an event just to see you, is a thing that we need to accept as well. You need to kind of market the event as a whole and why it's going to benefit them. And then obviously add in the side note that you're also going to be attending talking about a specific topic or theme or message, product launch, that should be really important to this person as well, to try and break the status quo. And then thinking about things like, geography, for example. If you've got an event in London, sending outbound messaging to people that are based in Germany and so on, it's probably not going to be that great, in getting people there. So having an effective data strategy to be able to target radiuses, for example, of specific areas, and trying to get people that are probably more likely to attend because it's not as an arduous journey for them is definitely another thing. And then when it comes to social, I think sometimes you just have to be a little bit more proactive with it. A lot of the followings for people's company accounts on LinkedIn are quite wildly irrelevant a lot of the time, because LinkedIn is obviously a ground for salespeople like me to go hunting, and they'll follow lots of companies so they can see if there's like triggers or so on for them to actually then reach out to them and try and sell to them, as opposed to actually being, looking for information about what that company does and how it benefits them. So sometimes if you've got an ABM strategy, for example, in place, or a target account strategy, is getting in touch with the people in those organizations, telling them what the event is all about. What is it in it for them as a whole, and then what is in it for them if they come and speak to you specifically too. Treating it almost as a networking piece, as well as a brand awareness and kind of typical events marketing piece as well, I suppose.
Well, I was just to jump in there as well. I think when you sign up for these events, when you're attending these events, you can also run like an ABM campaign. You've got a full list of attendees there, exhibitors. You can gain data from people that are actually going to be there. And when you're emailing people, instead of emailing it to, say, a database where you're not sure who's going to be there, who knows about this event, you can message people who are actually in that event, and like Jack said, almost use it as like a networking tool as well. And I think that's something really important that I think people sometimes, is not an oversight per se, but I think sometimes people forget that is also an option.
No, absolutely. No, and it's actually quite interesting, because you kind of one of the questions that I was going to ask for later on in the webinar, just about marketing. I'll come back to it later on.
Felt left out.
So, just then, I mean, obviously these sorts of events that there's no getting away from the fact that the benefits can be vast, but they don't come cheap. And it's really important that when you're there, you actually get the most out of them. So how can our viewers actually make the most of the time that they spend at an event, whether or not they're whether or not they're there as an attendee or as an actual exhibitor?
I have really, really strong views on this. But I'm probably in some cases not the best person to ask, because I'm ruthless is the wrong word. But when I'm at an event, I've noticed in so many occasions, and I'm sure that anybody watching this has probably seen this too if they've been to an event, where you'll be stood on a stand and you'll look across and there'll be a competitor or another business there, and there is a person sat on a chair behind a laptop, clearly doing their emails or working on something. And while they're doing that, there are literally hundreds of people walking past their stand. And if you go back to that original thing that I was saying, when you asked me around, why do businesses do events, and I kind of posed that question as to why do we as marketers sometimes forget what marketing was all about, trying to capture the attention of people that have got a level of intent or a potential requirement for what you do. There are hundreds of people walking past these guys that you see on stands, and they're sat there doing their emails, that have taken the time to, first of all, register for an event. I know it only takes about 30 seconds to do that, but it's still a time investment. And then travel from wherever they've come from to the event, because they believe that there is something of value at that event for them. They think there's somebody out there they should talk to. There's something of interest, something they can learn from it. And there are people just sat there, just letting them go past. So me and Ian, it's quite funny actually, when we go to events, we'll turn it into a little bit of a game where we'll try and see how many people we can stop in the middle of the aisle as they're walking past. We'll literally just stand out like there's really annoying people that you get in like train stations when you're late for your train or something, trying to stop you to, buy something from them. We're literally like that, stopping in front and asking people. It's a really, really good conversation starter actually. What was it that brought you here today? And there are there's only one response you really get, but there are two options when you ask that question. Number one is, I'm skiving. I just fancied a day off work, and I thought I'd just come walk around this events, this exhibition area for a couple of hours, and then get the train back home and go home early. No one's going to tell you that, even though that probably is the case in some instances. Or secondly, it's because I'm part of this industry and it sounds interesting and I want to learn something. Okay, well, come and see if I can teach you something and open up a conversation like that. So I think, why would you spend that amount of money and not want to talk to people and just sit behind a laptop screen and wait for people to come to you? You've got this entire room of people with intent, and some of them might be time wasters, but you don't know unless you go and ask them. So that's my first thing. Sorry, I'm getting a bit emotional over that, aren't I? But yeah, that's the first thing. But it's also a really, really good opportunity for you to do market research as well. For when you're asking people, you're asking people what brought you here today. You can take that back with you and inform the rest of your marketing. Well, I'm interested in this particular, this is a very generic and general example, but I'm really interested in advanced and smart manufacturing techniques. Let's say. Don't think you'd probably get anyone saying that as a broad thing, but that's great. Well, we need to make sure then that when we go back to the office and we think about what our follow-up comms look like for this event, and also what maybe our next digital campaigns and so on look like, we need to make sure we're focusing on themes around smart manufacturing, Industry 4.0, all these kinds of things, because that's what everyone was telling me they're there for at that event. But yeah, I know, Robbie, you've got some views on this as well.
Yeah, well, I think as marketers, I think we're sometimes guilty of thinking our job ends at identifying the event, going to the event and paying for it, and then having a stand, and we think that's it, job done. And I think it's one of the only potential times when you're in a room with your suppliers, your potential customers, or prospects and customers. It could be one of those only times. So it's just like you said, Jack, to get qualitative insights from that event is so important. And like I said, it could be as simple as asking why they're at the event, or it could be how they're finding, if it is your customer, finding how they're finding your product or your service. And naturally you're gonna obtain those quotes, those testimonials from them. I mean that's the marketing sort of brain in me, but it feels that engine to me. Marketing content, even just taking, for example, a form of video recorder, if that's your phone or that's a proper camera, you can be doing video case studies with your actual clients at the event. You've got that physical face-to-face sort of conversation you can have with them. But even something as as simple as just asking how they're finding it and writing down a testimonial and ask if they're happy for it to publish on the site, it just gives that social proof to your product. And I think the other thing, we've discussed this internally. I've personally never done this, and I've probably been guilty of doing like the former, sort of sat down, identified the event and let sales take it from there. But as marketers as well, some of the things we've discussed internally is being able to actually speak to people outside your network, outside your customers, and obtain quantitative data, understand why they're there, and you can be able to then create thought leadership, like Jack said. You can create reports, industry reports. And I think it's just something where you can then go forward from there, be able to advertise through LinkedIn, through email, and it shows you as an industry leader within that vertical. And I just think that's really, really important as marketers, not to just go to these events thinking, oh, it's just a lead generation exercise, and actually coming away and going, actually, we can create all this brilliant bit of content by just this one afternoon at an event. And I think the other final obvious thing is you can actually take a look at what your competitors are doing. Something as simple as that, understanding, what their strategy is when it comes to exhibition and stands, and just understanding what they're asking people, how they're approaching the event. So you can then take that away if you feel you've had your stand's inferior, what you're doing is inferior. You can then take that away and go, right, for our next event, we're going to invest X amount and try and get X amount and do this and do that. And I think that's really, really important to take away as well, is that it's not just it's not just an event for lead generation. There's so many other exercises you can do at these exhibitions to be able to fuel content and strategies going forward. Yeah, and I think also, and I know Jack's going to talk about this as well from a post-event strategy in a second, and is that you can see it. And well, I'll let Jack talk about it actually, but I was going to say, because people will be at different intents and they'll be at different stages of their buyer's journey, you can then tailor everything you do in order to push them down the funnel and nurture them effectively off the back of that event. And I think having that data in a CRM like HubSpot is so important, and be able to take that from the event and then implement that in further strategies down the line and further content down the line. I think it's just so important, but is quite often overlooked in my eyes anyway.
I think you raised some really good points there. The multi-channel point that you raised, really important. Taking a camera with you, doing recordings of the event itself, getting little sound bites and so on from your salespeople that are there, and the conversations you've been having and what you've learned from the event, and even if you can get people that come onto your stand to do a little video snippet or something, and using that as part of your it's still your event strategy.
Exactly.
It's still your event strategy. You're just deploying that on a different channel.
I think even just record, like you said, even recording your time there, just make people aware that you've been at these events. And then people might come out to you and say, I mean, I've had it previously where we've done a recording at an event just saying we're there, almost like a mini vlog sort of style. But it's been a recording saying we're there. And we've had someone reach out going, oh, I'm gutted, we were going to go, but we ended up not going. And then they reached out and it started a conversation, and then it generates that opportunity. So even just displaying the fact you're there is so important. I just think it's forgotten sometimes, like I said, behind a barrage of when trade shows give you that and you stick your logo in it, come meet me on stand B13, whatever it is, right? I think sometimes gets forgotten that you can create your own content from that, and then gather that qualitative insight from people that are there, your customers, your suppliers, and just anyone that's there. You can just gather that data.
Another thing that we haven't talked about is the actual mechanics of doing this as well, which is quite an important thing, which I'm assuming a lot of the marketers that see this or listen to this will be interested in. Rob, you said to me the other day that you were speaking to somebody from an events company who told you how shocked they were at the number of people that turn up to exhibit with these multiple tens of thousands of pound stands. And they go, right, okay, then, so how are we going to capture the data? We haven't thought about that. Business cards.
It's a scanner, isn't it? It's a scanner, and it uploads it to an Excel spreadsheet. But it's like, what are you going to do with that data? How do you, and like you've said, how do you log the conversations you've had? How do you personalize your communications after that? I know it's very similar. I know we use HubSpot day in, day out, but also HubSpot CRM is a free tool.
Yep.
You can upload X amount of, I think it's 2,000 free contacts, but it's a free tool to use. Just set it up, even just before an event, just so you can log your data and log the conversations you had.
Yeah. There's even if you haven't got HubSpot, there are businesses out there, especially in this sector, that use Salesforce, Microsoft Dynamics. Some businesses make the decision to use platforms like Sage CRM and parts of SAP and things like that. But the principle is still the same. When we've been to events, what we've done is we've had our kind of structure and so on, and our backdrop, and all our tables and chairs and all that sort of stuff. But we have a couple of computers on high tables with HubSpot landing pages on them, which are branded in the same brand and style that we're going for the event. So it fits into kind of the aesthetic and also the messaging that we're promoting at that event, with lead capture forms on them. And it's simple as that. If you speak to somebody on the stand, you could take them over to the computer and ask them to fill it out, or literally once you stop speaking to them and you get a business card, or you say, would you be interested in following up? Just go over to the computer, fill out the form, and it standardizes everything and make sure that all the data is put into your CRM. Regardless of CRM, you can do this. And the other thing is as well, for marketers, when you're back at the office and you want to glean insights, not only just things like how much revenue can we attribute to that event, but those quantitative things that you were talking about, Rob, around what brought you here today, what was the type of conversation. In those form fields that you build on that landing page, you could build drop-down fields with options on there, which are probably the most likely to cases and situations that people find themselves in, either pains, objectives, interests, and so on. And again, you've stored that then inside your system, and you can use that as a means to personalize your outreach to them and marketing comms to them as well. It's such a easy thing to do, and you save money on not having to get a scanner, which is another win. So yeah.
So I mean, we've kind of touched ever so slightly on how HubSpot can be used to support, marketing teams, post event. Rob, is there anything in addition to what Jack's kind of touched upon there that you'd like to add from your perspective of how companies can use HubSpot to support and streamline marketing efforts post event at all?
Well, funny you mention that. I think HubSpot had a marketing events object. I think it's an object for a long time, but it was purely for virtual events. So you could connect it up to Zoom, you could connect it up to whatever webinar. Ironically, not LinkedIn Live, which is quite funny, but the rest of it, you could connect it all up. What they've released, I've noticed on Tuesday or Monday, they have released, you can now import contacts from an offline. So you can say, I'm just trying to think of an event, you've got Mac 2024 for industrial people, and then in April, you can create your marketing event. I've got my screen up here. You can create your event here. So all you have to do is go into your CRM, anywhere in the CRM contact. And then on the drop down here, you'll see it on all the CRM suites. You can click marketing events. Then all you have to do is create a marketing event here. You put in your name, that's all you have to put in. Start date, organizer, just make sure to fill that in. And then it will create an event like this for you. Now, previously, you weren't able to upload data straight from a spreadsheet into marketing events. But now all you have to do is go into actions and import event contact. And then, like I said, select the activities you'd like to import and then just go through the HubSpot wizard. I'm not going to do it. I did a test upload earlier on just to make sure it does work. But you just have to run through the wizard here. And then what it will do, it will show you the contacts that have registered, cancelled, attended the event, for example. And then from there, you'll be able to see within that contact there what marketing events they've been to and what their progress is. And I think this is really, really important. I'll stop sharing because I'm conscious that I'm just watching the HubSpot screen. But I think what's so important is being able to attribute success to these events. Because like I said, and like Jack's mentioned there, so many people go without even a CRM to these events, and then it might be 6 months down the line and they reach back out and go, oh, we want to buy. And then you have to think back, right, logically, when was the first touch point we had with this person? What event did they attend? When did we last speak to them? What did we last speak to them about? And it's really hard to attribute whether it's a direct inquiry or it happened earlier on and they've been through a whole buyer's journey with you. So I think being able to log that now straight away, whether you have a scanner, whether you don't, whether it's manual upload from a spreadsheet, however you choose to do it, being able to then attribute success to that one event is so powerful. And, it fuels, like Jack said, people are spending tens of thousands of pounds on these events, more than that, it's spending loads and loads of money on these events. How can you, in my opinion, how can you knowingly attribute money and contacts and revenue to those events if you're not tracking it and if you can't see where you first had those touch points? So I think it's a really important update. It's a little gimmicky update that I just saw this week, and I thought that's probably spot on. But I just thought I'd show you that now and show you that you can just upload lists and you can attribute it to marketing events and use that object. Truthfully, I don't know if it's in the free version of HubSpot, but certainly we use the pro services, and you can use it from there, and you can attribute contacts and attribute revenue through that.
The absolutely beautiful thing about HubSpot in this context as well, and we are entirely biased to anyone watching this because obviously we're a HubSpot partner. This is probably available in other platforms, which I just don't bother learning about because they're just not as good. But probably available on other platforms. But you saw, hopefully on Rob's screen there was a tab called Associated Campaigns. So if you build your events capture strategy inside a tool like HubSpot with forms and landing pages and so on, you can add those to a campaign. Any pre-event communications, you can add those to a campaign. Any follow-up communications, you can add those to a campaign. Any articles that you produce, any video content you publish, any social media posts that you push out about this, you can add all of those to a campaign. And what that does, when you click into the campaign view, you're not limited anymore to be able to report directly on the impact that just the event has. You're able to report on the impact that all of your efforts around the event have had in one place. And that's really, really important because you can literally go into a dashboard and you can see from all this time and effort that I invest in this is how many new contacts I generated from the event. This is how many people I influenced because they touched some of our content or materials, regardless of whether they went to the event or not. They touched or interacted with or saw some of our material that we published as part of our event strategy. this is how many deals went into the pipeline because of it, worth this amount, and this is how much we actually got from it. And it feels absolutely amazing to me that in 2024, and I've been working at Axon Garside for 8 years now, that I'm having exactly the same conversation with marketers as I was 8 years ago. How can I attribute revenue? You should be attributing revenue, because why are you firing into the dark with this stuff if you don't actually know how much money it's bringing back to you? And I think that's just like the critical bit. It's so important. Sorry, get emotional again.
Next time, don't worry about that. No need to apologise. So, kind of just to round up, really, it's been amazing discussion, really interested insights from you both. Jack, I'll start with yourself from a sales perspective. Just keen to get your what you would consider to be your key takeaway that you would want any manufacturer to take away from this webinar, that may be interested in or may have an event, or that may have an event coming up. What would you, or it's like your like golden tip be for anyone attending an upcoming event?
Be brave. So step outside your comfort zone, into the aisle, stop people, have conversations with people, and don't just wait for them to come to you. And secondly, which is the one that's very left field, is if you're going to an event and you're staying over, book one of the hotels that are near the complex. Like they're usually like Marriott's or something like that, because everybody who goes to these events, or your competitors, or people that could attend in there that could even be customers, in the evening, they're all in the bar and they're all eating food, and it's such a good opportunity to have conversations with people as well. So yeah, my 2 golden nuggets there for you.
Catch them in the bar when they've got a few beers down them.
Just talks more volumes about my style of selling, maybe.
And Rob, same question to you, really, mate, but just more from like a marketing perspective.
Yeah, I've got 2 similar to Jack. I think the first one is be creative. In terms of what you want to get out of the event, think about, it sort of leaned into my second one, which was going to be think about the people that are there. Think about the messaging you want to get across. Think about, almost build a persona for the people that are going to be at this event, and be able to think about your positioning, think about your messaging. What is the key pain point? And first of all, what's the pain point you're solving by being there? How can you get people's attention? How can you stand in the aisle and talk to them about their specific pains, right? And just think about how you're messaging when you've got your stand. Think about what you want to put on that stand. Like for us, we're a HubSpot Diamond partner, but I would be more thinking about, right, what pains are we solving for these businesses, rather than just advertising the fact we're a marketing agency. So that's my first one. I think the other one is, like I said, be creative. Think about what different bits of marketing you can get from that, different bits of marketing, different bits of collateral you can get from these events. You're in a room with people that are in around your business every single day, and you've got, for once, you might meet them once a quarter in a normal business setting, but for one day and one day only, you are in a room with all your customers and all your suppliers, right? And they're all there for different reasons, but you can get the same sort of content from them. You can get testimonials, you can get video case studies, and you can just really leverage the opportunity you've got at that event to really put fuel in that marketing machine. I think that, for me, is the biggest thing. If I was I'm a marketing manager, but if I was a marketing manager in industrial, I think that would be my number one thing I'd take away, is just be open to the possibility of getting a whole range of content from that one exhibition.
Awesome. Right, so then, I think that's all the time that we have for this webinar. It's been an awesome discussion. Thanks again to you both, Jack, Rob, for sharing your insights, and a huge thanks to everyone watching for attending. So if you've not already, check out the website www.axongarside.com for more manufacturing content, and also be sure to keep your eye out for any upcoming webinars. And if you head over to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, be sure to tune into the Make and Market podcast.